Casual Magic has been brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can get cool stuff. Use the code CASUAL to get 5% off of your sale. And then also by Coalesce Apparel, where you can get really cool t-shirts and stuff, and use the code CASUALMAGIC to get 10% off your sale. And by Architect, a deck hosting website that doesn't really sell anything, but they like me and I like them, so kindly use them. And now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam, Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., Coalesce Apparel, and Architect. And today is the 150th episode of this show, which is insane to me because it's a project that I just started on a whim, and I've never done anything this long that wasn't an actual job that I had to do. So, I couldn't figure out how better to celebrate today than to have the head designer of Magic himself, Mark Rosewater, to join me to sit and talk about our shared love of this game. Because it's like 30, we've had Magic has now been around for 30 years. I've been playing for like 28 of them, and Mark's obviously been playing for 30 of them. And beyond that, it's just such a great time to be a Magic fan right now. Like the limited sets have been some of the best of all time. The sets, every, I mean, we all complain about the fact that there's too many sets, but at the same time, there are more cool things to do in Magic now than ever before. It's super fun. It's been just revitalizing. And I think a lot of us can say that through lockdown, without Magic, we would have been in a lot worse place. So thank you so much for joining me today, Mark. I'm really appreciative.
Well, thanks for having me. I always love talking Magic. So
Yeah, like I figure I'm like, who could I get that would be cool to talk Magic that's as enthusiastic as I am? And yeah, so that's sweet. What I actually wanted to talk to you about though is the fact that, as I said, Magic's been around for a very long time, and one of the things I've been doing this past year, I've been going back and I've been looking at older sets and just seeing how they were designed, how they've evolved, and because as part of Commander, I like to go and find cool ways to synergize ancient cards with modern cards and make cool things happen. But I've noticed that since, let's say, the last Dominaria, Commander has had a huge impact on the way you guys design cards. Obviously, we know that like every set now has a million legends in it, and then Jumpstart has legends, and Commander decks have legends, and there's dedicated Commander decks for everything. But that's surface level. I'm really curious to see how has it changed the way you approach Magic design, because historically you guys are making Magic for the idea of people are going to play 4 copies of a card. You're going to have a 60 card deck. You're either going to be playing limited, sealed, or some form of constructed. Commander's a different beast, and I'm curious, Mark, where has that taken you when you're trying to design new sets?
well, I mean, here's the thing that's interesting is one of the things about Magic. When you look at the history of sort of design, is Magic design is always in flux because Magic, the game itself, is always in flux, and that what matters or how people are playing is constantly changing. And
Yeah.
so the biggest change in the last 5-10 years has been what I call a push toward the eternal world.
Mm,
Right?
mm,
And like the center of Magic for a long time was like competitive standard. That was
yes.
like what we focused on. And now, like, the most popular format in tabletop Magic is Commander, which uses all the cards. Like there couldn't be, and it's singleton, it's 100 card,
Right.
it's political. I mean, like it couldn't be farther away from, competitive 2-player Magic.
Hmm.
So it's had a lot of impact. So let's get into like the impact.
Yeah.
Here is probably the biggest impact, which is if I'm going to make new cards and I'm putting the cards in a small pool, it's a lot easier for those cards to have impact.
Yeah.
Because if this is the fifth set of all the sets in standard, hey, it's not hard to make this impactful. It's not
Sure.
hard to make this matter. But when I say I'm the 100th set or whatever, I think we're about to come up to Magic's 100th set, not counting core sets or supplemental sets.
That
I think
There's
quilting
so
is
many
Magic's
different ways to
100th
count.
expansion. And so, but if you count the core sets, the supplemental sets, like we're well over 100.
Yeah.
So whenever we make something now, we're competing against a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a couple challenges that brings our way. So challenge number one is we have to like it used to be. Let's say, for example, we were making a brand new version of an effect. Like
Yeah.
here's a famous effect we did many years ago, but hey, now here's a tweak on the effect. It
Mhm.
used to be, oh well, yay! I haven't had this effect for a while. I'm happy to have this effect again. That's great.
Mhm.
And now it competes against that effect. It competes
Right.
against the card that's the most famous version. And so we
And if
have
it's
to get a
not, like,
little more neat.
exactly compatible, right? Like,
Yeah.
then people get really like, "Why do werewolves act differently than werewolves?" It's like, "Oh, guys." Yeah.
So right. So part of our problem is we have to be a little more niche in our designs,
Mhm.
meaning we can't. It used to be if something did something, we could do a new version, and it's the new version, and that the fact that that's what you could play was enough. Like you
Sure,
want to play this
exactly.
effect in standard? Well, here you go. Here's the effect in standard,
"Hey,
and the
look,
fact that
cycling is back. Yay," you know?
yeah, yeah. So that means when we make effects, we're more conscious of what we've done before, and we're more likely to go, let's change it up a little bit in a way that is different than what was done before, or that, like, if I make
Mm.
a card that's exactly what we made before, but just costs more because of modern whatever, that's not exciting to people who are playing old format. Now, sometimes if it's a rare enough effect, now you get a second of the effect. There's times where it matters, but um, so we have to be more conscious of that. We have to be more conscious of sort of how we're playing, and the other big thing is when we make a new mechanic. The way I explain to people is if you're playing a 4 of 60 card format
Mm.
versus a 100 card singleton 100 card format, I think it's over 6 times as much volume, meaning
Ye
whatever I would make, I have to make 6 times of that much. Whatever would make it work in standard, I have to make 6 times much of that to work
yeah.
so when we make mechanics, sometimes we make mechanics that are very insular mechanics.
Mhm.
Energy is a classic example, right?
Yes.
Well, if you want energy, you need energy. And so before, what was enough to make it work, that same amount, now we have to make 6 times as much, which just isn't viable. Forget blocks aren't here anymore. Like
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
it's not viable on new things to make it at the volume where instantaneously it can be played in older formats.
It's funny you mentioned energy because that's one of my, like, poster children for, like, I wish I had an energy commander or some commander that would work with that, but I realized we only had 2 sets ever with energy, and they were enough. Like, I had a standard deck that was a Thopter's Infinite Energy Engine, etcetera, and it works really well in limited, but when I've gotta make a 100-card deck of let's say 60 cards I need
Yeah.
of that are non-lands in order to make a deck, to make enough cards that actually do energy, there's, like, no feasible real way without just going way outside of theme or whatever in order to make it work. And I've noticed, especially like for instance in Neon Dynasty, you guys in old Kamigawa, you would have like here's samurai. They only care about samurai. If you want a samurai deck, here's the 3 sets with samurai. Good luck. But then this time around, you're like samurai or warriors, ninjas or rogues, and in doing that, you gave a much broader audience the ability to integrate these ninjas and samurai into their existing decks or build a ninja samurai deck that would also have cards to round it out to 100.
Right. And so that's one of the things is when we make a set, we have to be conscious of our themes and saying, are we making themes that are backward compatible? Now that's not
Mm.
to say we can't do anything new. There are other formats other than Commander.
I try to tell
Limited is
people
a
that.
thing. People do play standard, especially online. Like, there is formats that people play. So we do want to do new things because that's kind of fun of it. And sometimes if we do a new thing, we can come back and do more of the new thing later.
Mm,
But we really have to be conscious of how are our themes, how do they work with backward compatibility? And so once again, it's not that every theme has to work perfectly with every format. It doesn't.
sure.
But nowadays, we can't make a set and go, well, none of these themes will work at all. None of them are backward compatible. That
Right.
we won't do that anymore.
And it's interesting to me because of the fact that you've got like the issue of you're fighting against every card that's ever been printed that's legal in Commander or whatever. And because I've been talking to a lot of other designers about this sort of thing. It's very hard to test a commander deck to see is this card going to work or is it going to do the thing because you've got one copy out of 100 cards. You need to draw it out of the card, play it in a scenario where it's going to do something and be able to really evaluate what's going on instead of testing a card for 60 card where you can build 4 cards in there. You can set up a scenario to be able to see what the cards and the mechanic actually do rapidly, and trying to understand the dynamics and how to balance the game around this mechanic is challenging. And for the most part, you guys haven't had a lot of misses. Like there's I mean, I think that design has gotten very cognizant and very good about understanding what mechanics are going to break Commander or not, versus what mechanics can still work. I mean, I'm trying to think what's come up recently that was like a big enough deal, but like honestly, it's there's so many sets in my head right now that trying to
Well,
keep
I
track
mean,
of everything that's going
there's
on.
a couple things going on real quickly. One is we started an entire team. We have
Yeah,
what we call the casual play team that like we now play test these formats in a way that weren't play tested before. There's a dedicated team to it. And they have some tricks and like you're correct. The whole idea of the difference between a standard competitive deck and a sort of a casual commander deck is how often things happen, right?
yeah,
Consistency is really important for competitive play. I want my deck to do the same thing every single game in competitive play.
exactly.
In casual play, I don't. I want high
No,
variance. I want games to play out differently. I want
yes,
cards to come together that I've never seen before, and
exactly.
that's why it's 100 card singleton, versus 60 card 4-up, right? That's the nature of why it's built that way. Um, but I mean, so another thing that leads to us is when you're in the world where variance is higher, where it's more combinatorics, you want to build your cards a little bit, like you want to make your cards a little more open ended because
Mm,
you want the mix and match of cool things to happen. Now,
yeah,
I've always been high synergy. I tend as a designer to be a little higher synergy than most designers. But another thing that Commander has done is it's forced us to be a little bit high in open ended synergy. And we have to make less parasitic stuff, and we
yeah,
have to be a little more. I have to make this card and build it such that it makes itself wide open.
yeah,
Like a good example was like I just did Infinity, right? Infinity just came out.
sure.
Um, and one of the goals there was, and this is kind of true of all Commander. This is just the set that I did set design on. So this is the set that I was in charge. Like I had final say in what the cards did.
Sure.
We were trying really hard with our legendary creatures to I didn't want to say, oh, here's a deck that already exists. I'm just going to throw. I don't want to like usurp other decks. I wanted to make legendary creatures that go, oh wow, I've never made this deck. For example, one of my proudest designs in Infinity was Vorthos.
Mm,
And Vorthos is like, okay, you're going to build a set around a character. Well,
I
you've never
love
done
that
that
card.
before, right? And so it makes you I think what we're trying to do, and this is all commander products, I'm just talking about the one that I did, but is we want to make commanders that make you, the player, have to go investigate and find new things. And like, I think early on when we didn't know better, we kept usurping existing cards. Like,
Yeah.
oh, here's just a better version of this card. Well, now you'll never play this card, you'll just play this new card. And
Yes, yes,
that's just
yes.
raising the power level of commanders, not really making it more fun. And so I know that the team that works on commander is really focused on we want to make it broader. We want
Mm,
to when we make new cards, we want to enhance the formats and enhance commander. We want new things to happen. We don't want to make the powerful things more powerful. We want to make other things viable so that you have more exploration and more opportunity.
yeah, because one of the big problems we had was when you guys started making Commander products in earnest and more cards for Commander, this what we noticed is that the speed of the format started going from turn 6, 7 to like turn 2 or 3, and it started getting very powerful very fast because they're like, "Oh, hey, it seems like there's nothing going on in these early turns. What if we give you some acceleration? What if we make things faster?" And it's like, "No, no, 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 no. Stop. That's not what we want. That's the wrong way to go. We want these games to be enjoyable and last a while." But I think that in the past few years, you guys have found a better balance for that, and it feels much like there's a tendency not to, like you just said, we used to have a time where every card that would come out would just delete half of my commander decks. Like, I would have a deck that I've been working on since, like, 2000 or something that is now no longer valid because you guys printed a precon that's just arbitrarily better. But instead of now just piling on top of, it feels like we're getting a lot more lateral jumps that make more interesting designs that allow me to take my cards in a different way, that allow me to build a deck and use the cards I have in a new fangled and neat design. Like, for instance, in Baldur's Gate, there was a Naya commander named Mazzy, who is an enchantress that she would be like, she cares about putting auras on opponents' creatures. And when your aura dies, it comes back to your hand, allowing you to do some weird combos. It's an entirely different way to do an enchantress deck from just standard draw a bunch of cards and then win with value or whatever. And it was so interesting and unique and multiplayer focused that it felt like it was a brand new avenue for me to take, and one of the most fun decks I've had this whole year because it was just such a novel way to play compared to the way I'd been playing. And so, like, I think your team's been doing a fantastic job with that. And
Yeah,
especially since we see, like, it used to be in design, you would be like, oh, the set's made for limited. And then there's a handful of cards at the top that are made for 60 card constructed play that we know that you can look at and be like, oh, yeah, this is for, like, the tournament player. It's not for us. And now those slots seem to be taken up by, like, commander cards, which is really wild to me. Like, oh, here's a bulk of the thing for limited, and then, like, a handful of commander cards at the top that when you draft, you're like, this doesn't do anything, but I can build a deck around it. So, but the thing is, and that leads actually into the question I wanted to ask you, which is limited in this past few years has been the best it's ever been. In my opinion, especially like Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, a Brothers War, a Dominaria United, absolutely fabulous, fantastic limited. And Commander has also been top of mind, but Commander and Limited are maybe as far opposite from each other as you can possibly get in Magic. How do you balance that? How do you guys try to make great and limited environments and without like having these commander cards pollute your pond, as it were?
they're not as far away from each other as you think. Limited cards, one of the things we've learned long ago is that casual constructed and limited aren't really that far apart. And when I
Yeah,
mean
that's
casual
fair.
constructed, what I mean is, hey, I'm just kind of playing with the cards I own.
Cards I own, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most played format in Magic, cards I own. And so limited kind of mimics some of that. So the actual, they're not quite as far apart as you think.
Mm.
Here's the trick to designing Magic is, and I talk about this all the time. It's not one game. Magic really is a whole bunch
It's
of
an
different games.
umbrella of
It's
many
a
games.
shared rule set and shared cards and stuff. So our job when we make a set is we want to make sure that the component pieces for different players to get what they want out of it. And that's one of the tricky things about designing Magic is it's not one audience. They don't use it one way. And so we've learned a lot of tricks over the years of how can I make a card that has this function but that function? How can you like one of the big things is how do I make cards for this group that doesn't detract from that group, right?
Mm.
And that we've learned a lot of how to sort of make good limited in a way that lets us make some cards that also can seep out into other places. And a lot of, I mean, like one of the things that's really interesting to explain what you were talking about before is
Mm.
whenever Magic keeps changing, right?
Yeah.
Magic is a thing in flux, and we, the designers, are always trying to catch up to it. I think people think that like we are the precursors that are making it change, but we're not. The players are what's making it change.
Mm.
I mean, we are trying to make the product the players want, so we're trying to anticipate what the players want, and what the players want evolves and changes as Magic evolves and changes, and then
Sure.
we're always trying to figure that out. What happens is we lag by a little bit because the technology takes time to figure out. So when we first started
Yeah.
making commander cards, we made it by how we made other cards, right? Like we just made it the way we did other things. And then what you learn is, oh, well, this is really different than that. And then we start to learn, okay, this is what this requires. And we ended up making a whole team of people and we learned from making it to go, oh, I see. If we shorten the play time, if we make the things more powerful, we're fighting against what the people want. Like that's not what they want.
Right.
So the cards we're making are not giving the players what they want. And as we get more feedback and can watch what happens, we start to learn from that. And then
Mm.
we can extrapolate. So like anytime we're doing something, the early versions of us doing something, for example, Throne of Eldraine, we were reconfiguring our power level because the power level you need when standard is the center of everything is different when modern and pioneer and
Yeah.
commander matter. And that's us readjusting. But we had never done it before. So like Eldraine kind of missing on the power level was us trying to revamp, but doing it in a brand new way we've never done before. And that's when the big mistakes happen is, okay, we've never done this. We're giving our best guesses, but it's new territory. We don't have the experience yet in this new area we're playing at. And that's where we're most likely to make mistakes. Not
Yeah.
that we don't make mistakes normally, but we'll make bigger mistakes.
Well, I mean, Eldraine, I loved Eldraine. I thought it was super fun to play, but at the same time, when you look at any format outside of limited, suddenly we had a lot of weird balance issues, like Arcane Signet coming out, or Corvald, or uh, Oko. But that being said, um, like I think honestly, like there's a lot of times that Magic does really innovative things that are really really cool. Like I loved the construct, not constructs, contraptions deck in unstable is one of my favorite things of all time.
Mhm.
Or the augment and host, which then became mutate, which I was super excited for.
Yeah.
Mutate is a bookkeeping nightmare that is still my favorite mechanic in Magic, so I will take it.
Yeah.
But then you guys do things like, hey, what if companions? And it's like, oh, that one that could have been better.
I will take the blame for companions. So basically, what happened was we were pushing the boundaries of what complexity could be. We were
Mm,
sort of revamping stuff, and one of the lessons we learned from Ikoria is the play design team, the team that balances everything, can handle one crazy new thing.
mm,
And we threw mutate and not contraptions and
and companions.
companion at them. If we had
Oh,
just thrown one, I think they could have handled it. We just gave them too much, and mutate was so much that they didn't get enough time on companions. And I think that the real big lesson now, it's a rule now, like when we go through our sets, when I hand off a set, I'm allowed one like
one
sort of
just
difficult thing.
complete
And not
space.
every set's supposed to have a difficult thing, but I'm not allowed more than one difficult thing. Some sets don't have any difficult things, but I no longer would hand off a set with two difficult things. And
Like, what was a difficult thing in Brothers War? Meld?
well, no, not every set
Oh,
has a difficult thing.
sure.
So there's sets that don't have a difficult thing. I don't think Brother War. I mean, there's nothing in Brothers War that's like out of the box. We've never done that. I mean, prototype's kind of a backwards kicker, but like we
Yeah.
understand kicker, so like it's in our wheelhouse to understand that. That's not too far away.
Yeah, prototype.
Well, something
That's
we've done
exactly it.
before.
Backwards kicker is a perfect way to think about it.
Yes.
By the way, love
Um,
prototype. Fantastic
I
mechanic.
think that Bro was pushing like every set is trying something new. Sometimes it's a mechanical thing, sometimes it's not.
Mm,
And Bro is really saying, hey, can we go back to the past? Can we tell a story that's already locked in? You know, like the tricky thing about Bro was, and it's a lot, I say it was kind of like Universes Beyond in that we didn't make, I mean, we made the story long ago, but the story is the story. So, like,
yeah,
here it is. Okay, where's the
you.
green in the story? Like, well, there's a little tiny bit at the end of the story. Well, what if we play that up a bit and make that a bigger part? You know, like one of the things that's a challenge about Universes Beyond is we're playing like these are things that weren't built necessarily to be a Magic set, and
Right,
so you know when we build a Magic world, we color balance it. We make sure that all the things are represented. We make
for
sure that
sure.
like the creature grid is like like one of the interesting things has been when you work in something that's not made for Magic, you run into challenges because that wasn't what it's designed for.
Yeah, like they don't have what is their like 4/4 flying white creature in this
Well, like for
Warhammer
example,
world?
Lord of the Rings comes out next year.
Sure.
There's not a lot of flying things in Lord of the Rings,
You
right?
got
It's
rocks,
just
and that's like it.
there's a few, but it's like not kind of Magic wants lots of flying things, and there was
Yeah,
like a few flying things.
maybe it's time for
Um,
horsemanship to come back.
I mean, well, wait for the set to come out. But the thing is, Brothers War was a challenge in that we said we're going back in the past, which we don't do a lot, and we're sort of taking a known thing, a novel, and we're going to bring it. And so that was challenging, and there's a lot of offshoots of that. So we purposely weren't like pushing boundaries in mechanics.
Mm,
Also,
mm.
because it was a throwback to the past, we wanted it to feel kind of like Magic as you remember it. And so being really new kind of fought that
Sure.
nostalgia feel of Brothers War. And so every set doesn't need to reinvent the wheel, and we have to understand what's the challenging thing about this set. And so this particular set, it was we were executing something that was weird, and that's what took our time. So we didn't push on boundary. Now, interestingly, Vision Design handed off a mechanic in Brothers War. What was it called? I talked about it in my article. It was basically a mutate in the graveyard. So
Oh
it went on
God.
artifact. What was it called? I'm blinking what it's called. It went on artifacts, and then in the graveyard, you could pay a cost and then take that text and graft it onto an artifact on the battlefield. It was
Graft it
kind of
onto
like
an artifact?
mutate out of the battlefield.
That seems insane.
Um, and anyway, what the feedback we got from set design was, whoa, too much, and we pulled
Oh,
back. So
scrap.
what?
Scrap. Was it
Scrap.
called yeah.
Scrap. Yeah, we called it scrap. And for example, we also had meld at common. We messed around with meld. We had a cycle of common cards that were it was a artifact and a spell, and then that you could meld them together. So like Vision Design, we did try crazy things and we did push boundaries. But what we found in set design was wow, there's so much going on, we needed to pull back. And so some
I
of the
did.
crazier ideas we did pull back on.
I do wanna tell you though, I did on, like, when the first day I was playing on Arena with, Brothers War, I did manage to, draft both Mishra and Dragon Engine, so I could try to live the
Oh
dream of
yeah,
melding them together,
yeah.
and I never had them both on table at the same time and died, 0 and 3, so it goes in Magic.
Yeah,
But
people keep asking about us to do more common meld, and it's. I'm not saying we'll never do it. I'm just saying it's really, really tricky.
yeah, I
It's
feel like
not an
that
easy
would be
thing.
weird to try to do, but it would be fun, but I mean,
Yeah.
um, it's funny because, like you mentioned, like, not really trying any insane things, and I'm looking at Brothers War, which feels very much like it could have been a 1990s era Magic set, not in terms of mechanic, but in terms of just, like, vibe. But,
Yeah.
like, Dominaria United, which is one of the everybody's been considering an all-timer, it
Mhm.
feels like Invasion 2, right? Like, having Domain, like, just lifted straight and played straight and I'll admit, when I saw Dominaria and I looked at Domain, I was like, "I'm not sure how this is gonna play out. It's been a while. I don't know if this is gonna work or not."
Mhm.
But it was so much fun, and it was so good, but that's one of those sets where I look at United and I'm like, "This set is gonna be off the charts limited, and there's gonna be nothing in here but the legends that come into Commander because Domain's not a thing that like, you can't really play a 5-color EDH deck and have a I mean, you can, but it's not easy, and it's kind of there's a lot of things that compete in that,
Yeah.
but
Jermaine is not the commander friendliest of mechanics.
no, but God, it worked so well, and you and the crew deserve all kudos for how good that set turned out. Absolutely fabulous. I've never felt sad about a set rotating since, like, I guess Kamigawa and Dominaria both were sets that I felt sad about rotation because I've
Mhm.
had so much fun with the limited format. Um, God, man, Magic has been so much fun lately. You guys are
Well,
just
I'm
killing it. It's
good. I'm
great.
glad.
It's wild, like, especially when I've been going back to now going to these events that have been starting up again and
Mhm.
seeing people and getting to play against all these decks in person, and it feels like we're at the cusp of a new renaissance of good time for Magic, but, I mean, there's a lot of disgruntlement. What are you gonna do? This is just the way the lockdown has dealt with us. Um, my questions next oh god, what do I wanna talk about next? How do you think Infinity did?
Infinity. I'm very happy with the response from the people who played Infinity. Um, for example, at Magic 30 in Las Vegas,
Oh, yeah, how did that
it
go?
was probably one of the most played things there, and I heard just nothing but really people that really had a great time and had a lot of fun. In fact, I had a judge who came to me at the end of the event. He goes, "I'll be honest with you, unsets are not for me. That's not my thing. But I ended up judging Infinity events the whole weekend, and I have to tell you, I can't believe how much fun people had." Um, Now, the challenging thing of Infinity was it was supposed to come out April 1st. Because of COVID things, the glue company went out of business.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
just crazy reasons it got delayed. And like my joke right now is it wasn't the only Magic set in space that came out that day.
yeah, I can't I understand the logistics, I understand the problems that you guys ran into, but by God, you guys just did not need to undercut each other by putting Warhammer and Infinity on the
I
same
mean,
day. I felt so
yes,
bad for you.
right. I feel bad for me too. I mean, the thing to remember was, look, it was an unfortunate circumstance of, like, I don't think the audience really understands behind the scenes. The fact that Magic has mostly come out, like, on time.
Is, like,
We have a logistics
insane.
team. Like, it's funny. I talk all the time about design. We have a whole logistics team whose job it is to get the thing printed, to get it shipped where it's supposed to be, and have it come out on time. And you know, behind the scenes, COVID has caused infinite problems with resources, with finding
With
things.
shipping,
Like,
with just getting
I'm
stuff
just like I
anywhere.
said, why were we delayed? The glue company went out of business. That's why we got delayed. And our logistics team, who does not get any kudos, I will give official kudos. They are awesome. The fact that so little of Magic has actually slipped, it's just they've done such a great job of problem solving. And behind the scenes, it's been crazy just because the world has been, in chaos, and so it's been a lot.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, as of recording today, I just got my notification that the coin flipping commander secret layer is finally shipping to me after a year, and I'm like, man, some company must have gone out of business somewhere else because that's just a rough one, man. I will say this: the last time we talked, it was under much different circumstances because, like, there was still all that anger about Universes Beyond. There was still a lot of weird tension game for people during like early lockdown. But now it feels like we've had a lot of Secret Layers, a lot of Universe Beyond. Warhammer is considered one of the best, uh, hands down precons you've ever made. Um, and it feels like people are getting more acclimated and used to the idea that there are cool things that you can like, cool other settings that you can do. But I really like that with Brothers War, you reminded us that magic is also a setting that matters, and that we have these stories of our own that we can tell and share. And seeing Urza's progression, Mishra's progression, I loved that thing you did of having like each of them get, baby, middle, and old
Yeah.
man versions. I thought that was genius. A fantastic way to tell the story through the cards. And I hope we see that more often because that's a really cool tool to have.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, I mean, it's funny. We are making a lot of products. I mean,
Yeah,
no
true.
doubt. As
You
one of the
guys,
people making the products, I'm well aware. Um, but one of the things that it's allowed us is there are so many different players out there that want so many different things, and just the ability to make a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Like, for example, I'll take Universes Beyond as a good point. We knew, like, we don't make a product if we don't, like, when I say test it, is we make sure there's the we want to make sure there's an audience for something, right?
yeah, you don't
As a
make something
business,
nobody wants to
we are
buy.
not going to make something that we don't think there's an audience for. That makes no sense.
Sure.
um and so we had done a lot of research. We did not, it wasn't like we said, let's just do Universes Beyond. We done a lot of research, and we said, you know what, there really is an audience for it. And I think what we found is, here's what I found is very interesting. When we make the Universes Beyond product, that's the thing you love, you get Universes Beyond, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they're making this. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, the fact that I can take my love of magic and this other thing, and they come together, and how amazing that is.
That was me
Um,
in Street Fighter.
but what happens is, like, when we make one thing, well, okay, a lot of people aren't fans of that one thing, and so it's very easy. Like, one of the things about, as the person who's been on the forefront, with the players for a long, long time, like, whenever we do something we've never done before, there's a lot of skepticism, right? This isn't magic as I know, and it's funny. Pick any innovation in magic, you know, things that now are considered like the most important, greatest thing magic ever did. Back in the day, when we first introduced it, there's a lot of skepticism.
Like flashback. What do you mean I can play the card again?
Literally, you can't pick something that someone didn't yell at me about. There's no thing that we like. The story I always tell is, we put out, I think it was Time Spiral, in which we had the bonus sheet where you had a card off the bonus sheet, and so you could get your normal rare and you could get your rare on the bonus
Yeah.
sheet. So you could get two rares. I also think you get a third rare if you got a premium, a foil. But
Yeah.
anyway, so you could get, for the first time I think ever, like, oh, you could get two rares in a pack. And then somebody was mad at me, go, way to spoil limited, Wizards. You're like there's nothing you can do that someone's not gonna get upset about. There's no and what I find is there's a lot of things that I think are scary in concept that once you get to play with them, like, it's so much different when you can experience it. And the thing about Universes Beyond that I think players don't, it's hard to understand till you get there, is there's something really fun about, like, whenever I start a design, I want to start from someplace I've never started before, right? I want to make cards I've never made before. And that Universes Beyond just for, like, one of my favorite designs I've done in years is I had to design Negan for Walking Dead.
Oh boy.
So what the,
Pick the most controversial one, Mark. Why not?
well, I mean, the mechanic. Okay, forget the character for a second.
Yeah.
The mechanic is an awesome mechanic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a
Okay.
perfect treasure commander, not gonna lie.
And so the point though is, forget the character for a second. Just the mechanic. That is a cool mechanic. I don't think I would have made that mechanic if I wasn't trying to bring to life this character from a comic and a TV show I knew. Like, the reason that card came about is like, okay, how do I capture this character? And I made that card. And that,
Yeah.
what I'm finding with Universes Beyond is we're just making things we never make because we got to bring this to life, and that it is breathing this really fresh life. I've seen some designs that I've never seen before, because when you're just like, okay, how do I make this happen? And you have to problem solve and do that. You just make some very different things. It's why Warhammer's a lot of fun,
Yeah.
because Ethan had to make stuff that
Yeah.
we'd never made before.
I
and
was talking to
it turned out
Ethan, and
really
he was
cool.
telling me, he's like, "Look, there's not a lot of cards I can reprint into a Warhammer, so I have to make like a million cards for all four of these decks, which means you're forced." like, it's like that, the book you always talk about, what, a whack on the side of the
A
head?
whack on the side of the head, right?
Yeah, where
Front to
it's like
back.
you're forcing your brain to work in a pathway it's not normally going down in order to make this character work because you've got a template that exists. You've got a thing like Drizzt Do'Urden in Forgotten Realms. You know what Drizzt does. So you're like, okay, well, how do I make this show up as a magic card? And I think by and large, like for me, the most inspiring was watching the Street Fighter ones.
Yeah,
Because if you look at the way, like for instance, Ryu, you look at that character, it's got 2 in a red untap to in order to do its ability. But
yeah,
when you look at the way that thing is set up and mapped on the card, it is the exact hand motion that you would make to do a fireball with
yeah.
the character in Street Fighter. And I'm like, holy crap, that is the most innovative design I've ever seen because it physically mimics the way the card is worked. It almost felt like an onset in terms of like learning how to just be so bizarrely away from normal magic, but be amazing at the same time. And I was like,
Right,
wow, maybe this is something you guys should be doing more of.
right. I think what unsets are is just us playing in the future.
Mm.
And like for
Do you think
example,
that
one of my favorite
com-
designs of all time, just for cleverness, is we made a card. I'm trying to name the card. It was a holiday card, and it was a snow globe. It was Snow Mercy was the name of the card.
yes.
And I think Matt Tabak came up with this, which is we needed an activation for it, but it was a snow globe, right? So we were
Yeah.
trying to get you to evoke shaking a snow globe, and Matt came up with the ability of tap, untap, right? Because you're shaking it. Uh, and I think what has happened is here's another big thing. We're talking about chip. The theme of today is how magic is changing. When you live in a world where the most important thing is competition, you're a lot more serious in what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like it's,
Yeah.
I want to make sure when this is on the world championship that this, this focus, this is a serious game, and that as you drift a little more toward casual play, you're just more willing to do things that put a smile on people's faces. That
Exactly.
this is novel for the sake of it's kind of fun. Like one of the things to remember about design is you're making a whole package. When a
Yes.
player gets it, they get everything. They get the name, they get the art, they get the rules text, and that you want something that I want to make people smile, and that a big part of this, and like I said, Unglued did this back in the day. That part of that is it's not just what's written on the card, but how it reaches the audience, how they read it, how it affects them, what you get to do when you play, and the fact that this matches the pattern of something, or this really reflects that thing, or there's this deep cut. Like Brothers War has a lot of like really subtle references to old cards
Oh
that
yeah.
maybe you get it, maybe you don't, but if you do get it,
Oh, it's
wow,
the
this
best
is
thing
a lot of
ever.
fun.
Yeah, like
Um,
Onulet showing up again, or like freaking Chi showing up again. Oh god, there's so many like things that I just remember from my childhood that are just being referenced again in this set that just make me so happy. And I mean, Brothers War has been one of the most fun sets to just read, to just look at and be like,
yeah.
look, this is so rad. It's so cool. Um,
I
I
mean, I
don't know.
think we're on a golden age for Vorthos, is like what I like to
Yes,
say, and
yes,
that
we are.
I think in some level the push toward more casual play has pushed toward many different casual crowds. I think people think of commander players as like they're some sort of one type
Monolith.
of person or something. There's a wide even just talking about commander players, there's a wide swath. And I think there's a Vorthos crowd that we're recognizing, and we've been doing more stuff for them. And Brothers War is part of this of, you know, we really enjoy making the deep magic cuts. We really enjoy like, okay, not everybody's going to get this, but if you do, and as someone who's been playing Magic forever, since the beginning, Antiquity. There's one time that Antiquities was my all-time favorite set. Like when I first came to work for Wizards, I think Antiquities was my all-time favorite set, and it was a lot of fun making a set that kind of winks at Antiquities. It was fun
Antiquities.
making a set that winks at Invasion. I was a part of making Invasion, so that
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
set I actually was a part of making. So
What was that like for you to have to sit there and be like, "Oh, I need to make a whole bunch of domain cards again"? I haven't thought about that in a while. It must have been interesting to like take your new design experience and go back to something that you started with,
yeah,
a million years ago.
as a writer, for example, one of the things that happens all the time is you go back and you look at your old writing. And this is true for game design just as much as writing. And like I go back and look at Tempest, for example. That was the first set I led.
Yeah.
And while I'm very proud of Tempest, and it was a big deal in its day, it's like the Model T, right? It's like this, like for example, in it, we uh, Magic for some reason used to have X spells at common. And my big innovation in Tempest was to add a second red pip to it. Not
Ooh.
move it out of common, not like no, I'll add a second red pip, like because you can see like I'm like, oh, I don't want people to splash. Like we were moving in the right direction, but it's kind of funny when you look back and like there's so many things that are just part of how we make a set now that we never thought about. You know what I'm saying?
You know what's interesting? You mentioned Tempest, and I was talking earlier about how Commander is all about using weird cards. That card I mentioned, the Aura Commander Mazzy,
Mm-hmm.
it made me go back to Tempest and find a card you made called Flickering Ward, which is
Oh,
a
I've never
card
flipped
that's
on
like,
board.
you play it, enchant a creature, gains protection from whatever color you choose, and then you pay 1 white to return it to your owner's hand, which in an Enchantress deck lets you just loop this thing and just draw a billion cards, and it's so I like that's one of my favorite things about playing Eternal formats is I can look at a card from 25 years ago and be like, this thing has now got an insane life ahead of it. Like
Mhm.
there's insanely cool things happening, and I'm super excited about that. Um, I don't know. I just like going back and looking through your old like I do this thing called Scryfall Random every day, where I just hit random in the
Mhm.
morning and I post whatever card shows up. And
Okay.
there's a bunch of people who haven't played Magic for as long as I have,
Yeah.
and they'll be like, "What the hell is that card? Where did it come from? How come I'm not running it in my Frangle Brangle deck?" And you're like,
Yeah.
"Well, there's 25,000 cards. This one is perfect for you, but you're never going to find it unless you're digging through Mercadian Masks or something weird like that." Please go back to Masks. Masks block had the best land art, and I'm sure you could do a better job with that set than was done the first
Oh goodness, Mercadia. There's some
time.
cool things about Mercadia. There are also some weird things about Mercadia. It's one of our weirder settings.
Upside down mountains.
Yeah, upside down mountains.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not. Okay, maybe not. Because Rebels, and Mercenaries was not the most balanced mechanic of all time.
Yeah,
Um,
the Pro Tour, Mercadia's Mask Pro Tour was like everyone was playing one of two decks. It was like it was a
Lin
very slow
Civi.
Pro Tour. It was like Rebel decks and then some mono blue deck. And anyway, it was,
Yeah, it's like what beats the Rebel deck? Nothing. Crap. Okay, let's go. Um, It's wild because I think about now, like as I've been going through and looking at, like I was talking to Tim Willoughby and we were talking about the history of like Pro Tours and Magic and things,
mhm.
and every few years there'll be like a flood of people who are mad about whatever Magic is doing right now because the way they were playing is not the thing anymore. Like when you look at old spikes from like the Odyssey block who were like, oh yeah, we just want spells and just storm decks and like pure like no creatures, just pure control things all the time, and then they get pushed out, and then they get pushed out, and they get pushed out. And what do you think is current like right now? Magic is definitely leaning very heavily towards communal play, towards casual play and stuff. What do you think the next direction Magic is going to go is?
I have no idea. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting is
Like,
if
what
you
are
would
people
ask,
going to be mad about?
okay, so I started working 27 years ago. If you asked me the day I came in, if you showed me cards from Magic's future and said, "Is this a real card?" I mean, I would have no idea on a lot of it. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of, and there's things that I did that I wouldn't have, 27-year-old me wouldn't believe that was that something Magic would do. And that's one of the things I enjoy about it. The reason I don't get bored doing what I do is Magic keeps changing in ways that I can't predict.
Yeah.
Um, I have some idea, like it's my job to look at the future, and in some ways, I live in the future because I'm working on 2026 right now. So,
Oh, jeez.
um, my present is your future. Um, but one of the things we're always looking at is sort of figure out like where, like my job as head designer is where's the next thing,
Yeah.
mechanically speaking, at least. Like where's the space to go? Where's the space to move around? And that it always surprises me. I'll make something, and sometimes something you make takes a while to take off. For
Mm,
example, the first bonus sheet was in Time Spiral,
yeah.
and it took a while. I mean, now it's something we do, and
I
and
mean, Strixhaven Mystical Archive, phenomenal. The bonus artifacts that are in Brothers War, I don't know, dude. When I get to draft a Platinum Angel and a Wormcoil Engine, I feel on the top of the universe. When the opponent plays that Platinum Angel and Wormcoil Engine, I feel like crap. But I feel like that's just a Magic experience. So I love, by the way, how well you had integrated that bonus sheet into the limited play. Because doing things like having Ichor Wellspring be such a powerful card in the draw two cards
Mhm.
archetype is like, I love it. I love it so much. Oh,
Yeah, I know. So Yanni Skolnick was the lead set designer for Brothers War.
Mm.
Arini was the lead vision design, and Yanni was the lead set design. And I know when Yanni put together the sheet that, I mean, some of it was just what are cool artifacts people would love to have, but some
Sure.
of it was like, oh, what's a really neat throwback that also plays really interestingly in this limited. And Yanni also did Strixhaven, so like the idea of can you do a bonus sheet, but have the bonus sheet ingrained thematically and make it
I
something that's
think
interesting and limited, and
I think there needs to be a sometimes food. Like every couple of years, you do a sheet, like a set with a bonus sheet. It'll feel cool. It'll feel fresh, and it'll be awesome. But if you just make it every set, I think it'll the welcome will wear out.
I mean, the trick to making magic is find things people like, do it enough that they get it, and don't do it so much that they grow tired of it, right?
That's
And
true.
I mean, there's a balance, like one of the weird things in the world we live right now is we moved away from the block model into
Mm,
the current model, and we just churn through ideas faster than we did in the block model. Um,
yeah.
I think it's why Magic is doing better. It's funny. One of the things that we can look at is we can see we have a lot of data we can look at, right? We have sales data, we have play data, we have digital data, we have micro research
Sure.
data, and the current model of every block, every set is kind of its own thing, is wildly popular. Even though when you go online, people are like, "Oh, I miss blocks. Why don't you bring blocks back?" And I'm like, "Wow, the data does not remotely say bring blocks back," even though that is a common refrain you'll hear online. It's a very common refrain
I mean, I
online.
guess there is that sentiment of like, it's better to leave somebody wanting more than to say like, man, that was too much, and we'd like to leave now.
Yeah, one of the truisms in game design is end your game before your players want it to end.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the truism. And so what we discovered is if we do a really cool thing and you're like, oh, I want more, okay, someday we'll do more and you'll get more. But like, if we give you more right away, you're just not as excited that we give you more later. And like the way sets used to be is it'd be like 100%, 80%, 60%. That's how the blocks used to go. Like
Hmm.
the second and third set just didn't sell as well as the first set ever. It was just
Yeah.
like it was a thing you could watch. And
And
now, like sets sell based on how excited people are for that particular set. And so I don't know.
yeah, and it's weird because you guys used to like I remember when, for instance, Theros came out, and everybody's like, "Where's our cool Enchantress cards and stuff?" And you're like, "We saved it for the third set, so here's your constellation." And everybody being super mad because they're like, "This would have been awesome the whole time. This is what we wanted." And you're like, "Well, then we would have had nothing for the third set."
Yeah,
So in those cases, I'm glad that we've moved away. But then there's times where it's like, I wish we had had a second Kamigawa set. Like I know that inside you guys were all very hesitant about Neon Dynasty because it was going back to the most fun popular set except for Tumblr, and like you didn't know if this whole reevaluation was going to work, but it is honestly in my top 3 sets of all time, if not my
yeah.
personal favorite set of all time. How do you think that Kamigawa this year, what do you guys think internally about the reception of that, and how do you think that's going to change the way you look at going back to sets?
I mean, it's interesting. I think the lesson of Kamigawa is that I mean, it came about because we were listening to the player. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm,
we did not miss that there's players that want to go back to Kamigawa. It's very loud on my blog, for example.
yeah.
Um, And like the interesting thing was we had toyed around with the idea of doing a Japanese pop culture set. Like we had talked about doing that.
Mm.
And the conventional wisdom was let's just make a new world. Why are we going back to Kamigawa? And so what I had said to them, like I in my heart of hearts, I wanted to go back to Kamigawa because I'm like, look, there's an audience that loves to go back there. And so a lot
Wasn't
of
Kamigawa
me,
the
the
set that you
design,
took over when you were doing a head jut? When you first became head designer, Kamigawa was the set that the block that you were in, right?
yeah, so what happened was I became head designer in the middle of Kamigawa
That's
block. But I
weird.
mean, the train was on the track. There wasn't a lot I was going to
Yeah.
do. And so I fiddled a little bit, but I was very big on block planning. And so, like, I didn't plan that block, you know.
Mhm.
So Ravnica was like the first time, like, okay, you can plan a block. I made Ravnica.
Okay.
That was my first, like, okay, I can plot and plan
It
it. I did
worked.
Ravnica. But Kamigawa was kind of midway along. And so I just sort of, I mean, there wasn't much I could do at that point. I mean, Kamigawa, the Champions was done, and we were in the middle of doing Betrayers, and so,
Sure.
uh, but
It was
anyway,
too late. Yeah.
in my heart of heart, I knew the players, like some of the players, wanted to go back to Kamigawa, and so the real challenge of designing that set was, okay, I do want to do like, there's an audience that's going to love top-down Japanese pop culture world. and there's an audience that really would like Return to Kamigawa. Okay, how do we make one world that gives both those? You know what I'm saying? How do we do that? And then the what all came together was like, oh, that's the conflict, right? The conflict
Yeah.
of the world are those two worlds. You know, like modernity versus tradition is the conflict, and then we get to do both worlds. But there's a lot. I mean, the lesson of Kamigawa to me was I want to give players things they want, but it's not always going to be in the way they think. And that I talked about that. I did a talk for GDC where I talked about like 20 lessons, and one of my lessons was the players are really good at identifying problems, and they're not as good at solving the problem, only because they just don't know all the parameters that need to be solved, right?
Mm.
And so what I find in this is a related, like a corollary, I guess, is players know what they want, but they don't necessarily know the best way to deliver it. Like if I had said to you, let's go back to Kamigawa, and I had players vote, it would not have been Neon Dynasty. That's not what they would have asked for,
No.
right? And so the trick is, how do we take the essence of what players want, but know of what are cool things we can do and mesh those together. And
Mm.
so the lesson of Kamigawa isn't do bad things, like take old things that didn't work and do them again. The lesson is don't be afraid to listen to your audience and find things they like. And the trick is you have to find a way to execute that on a way that's going to deliver.
So
And the
you're
way
saying
that's
we're not
going
getting Ulgrotha Neon Dynasty?
if someone presents, I mean, not that external people can do this right now, but if internally someone came and pitched to me the most awesome way, and this set has to be Ulgrotha, but it's an awesome set, and here's why, I would listen. You know what I'm saying? It's not that I don't want to do Ulgrotha because it's Ulgrotha, but the reason Neon Dynasty worked was we had an amazing way to pull it off. And so I am open. I really, really, really listen to the players. And it's funny. One of the things in person that I'm told all the time is I do a bad job of making people know I've listened to them. I'm really bad at it. But I do listen to people. And like one of the things that's very common all the time is people will talk with me and I'll say something about the other person. And they're like, how in the world do you know that? And I'm like, because you
You
told me
said
that.
so,
That's how I know
and I
that.
remember.
I just didn't realize that I remembered from them telling me. In a lot of ways, sets are similar in that I listen to the audience. I'm on my blog every day. Look, I know what players are asking for. Now, there's a lot of players, they want a lot of different things. But part of my job as the head designer is what's the zeitgeist? What are people looking for? And then figuring out where to put that in a place that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that the good news is like Kamigawa was a big risk. And it paid off, and it was, so it makes it easier for me. The next time I go to pitch something crazy, it just makes my job a little bit easier.
I'm just saying this opens the door for Lorwyn to come back.
It makes my job a little bit easier.
Just saying Lorwyn can now come back.
Hey,
you got away.
I am not the thing keeping Lorwyn from coming back. I like Lorwyn. So.
Yeah, like I would love to see Lorwyn, or if we're doing Brothers War, I want to see a pre-mending shards. Show me how shards broke. That would be cool.
Yeah.
But anyways, we could talk about what I want later.
Yeah.
Although I will say this, Mark, before we wrap up here. I was one of those people who was asking for soldiers all the time because I've got a soldiers deck. It's my beloved pet commander deck.
Okay.
You made my dream soldiers cards, and then you made them blue. You made my Dolger land blue. You made the soldier that draws cards blue. I play red, white soldiers. Why could you do this to me?
Well, I mean, sometimes one of the things we have to do is shake things up a little bit. And I mean, the other thing that happens is we'll hear things like, oh, soldiers. People want more on soldiers. And sometimes it's where does it fit? And this, I mean, we'll make more soldier stuff. There'll be more soldier stuff coming. But in that particular world, it made a lot of sense in white, blue, and sort of like the thing that I find so funny is whenever somebody says they want a commander, they list all the colors that exist that do that thing. I want to do a blink commander. Well, make sure it's blah, 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 and blah, because I want to use every single one that does it.
I want every good card that's ever been printed to be in my deck.
And the secret is making good commanders is making, here's a really cool white blue soldier lord. Here's a really cool white red soldier. Like, it's actually, what's cooler is not giving you all of it, but giving you pieces and making you have to make some choices. And then there's a bunch of different decks rather than just one uniform deck that's the best deck.
And I mean, flavorfully, soldiers fit better in blue. They're more regimented. They're more structured than in red, which is for warriors and for more chaotic. I get it. but you gave me Boros Legionnaires in red, white, and so that's what I'm
I
stuck
know, I
with.
know.
But I was just like, oh my god, you gave me my dream set, and then just like no. Anyways, that's fine though. It's such a I'm having so much fun with Brothers War. I'm really, really loving it. It's like what I would hope to see for a 30th anniversary celebration of Magic. Like Dominaria and Brothers War have been fantastic. I'm not looking forward to Phyrexia because I don't like Phyrexians, but that's just how we have to deal with it.
Well, I'm here. I'll give a little tease for your audience. So I led both Phyrexia OB1 and March of the Machines.
Mm.
I led Phyrexia because I do love the Phyrexians. They're my favorite villains. And so my goal for that set was, how do I make Phyrexian lovers happy as I can by delivering a Phyrexian set to them, at the same time making a set that people will fall in love with that don't necessarily like Phyrexians.
I hope so.
And so I'm curious for you to see it. Like we spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time understanding Phyrexian lovers and Phyrexian haters, and I wanted to make sure the Phyrexian lovers got what they wanted, and that here's a set that if you love Phyrexia, this is the set for you. But I also wanted to make sure the people that are a little timid about Phyrexia, that aren't fans of Phyrexia, would love the set too. And so there's a lot of neat things in that set.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. My worry is that we end up with what was like in the Battle for Zendikar Shadows of Innistrad year, where it was just like Eldrazi everywhere, and it's just Eldrazi, and if you don't like Eldrazi, you're screwed. And it's just like, because it feels like there's been a lot of Phyrexia, and you're taking away all of my favorite characters and turning them into Phyrexians, and I'm really not happy about that. That's not your call. Maybe it is your call, and if you did, then I'm really angry about it, Johnny. But I am holding judgment because these last two sets have been so good that you've earned some credit.
The trick, here's the secret sauce behind the scenes is, when I do a set, I have to figure out what is the element of what we're making that will make various players happy.
Mm.
And so it's like, oh, how can I take, so we're doing a Phyrexian set. Hey, what are the qualities of Phyrexia that people who might not love Phyrexia might still enjoy? And my good example there is, there's a lot of people that do not like Phyrexia, but love Proliferate, and Proliferate's a lot of fun, but Proliferate wouldn't have existed if not for the Phyrexians, and so so that's a challenge for that set. So March of the Machine, every once in a while, like I said, we have to start from somewhere new. I am given something, in this case by the story team, that I'm like, what? How, what? And so this was the reason that I did March of the Machines was I didn't know how anyone would do it. I'm like, I guess I'll take it on because I don't know anybody's going to do this. And it was one of the craziest asks I've ever been given. And I'm really, like, we figured it out, and I'm really, really proud of it. And it is, it's me handing off to Dave Humphreys. And it is, I cannot wait for people to see it. It is hard to explain the set. It is, oh my gosh. Anyway, it was a wild ask, and I'm so proud. Like, it's one of the proudest things I've ever been. I figured out how to make this set, so I'm very proud of it. So anyway, both Phyrexia LB1 and March of the Machines to start off the year are really cool things. Even if you are not a lover of the Phyrexians, there's awesome, cool things coming your way. And if you do love the Phyrexians, we've got some Phyrexians coming your way. The Phyrexian arc will not shy for having some Phyrexians.
That is the truth. Okay, so I will end with this. You yourself recently have hit 1,000 podcast episodes, which is completely insane, by the way.
By the way, I'm almost there. I'm at 980, I think. But I'm almost to my 1,000 podcast. I'm not yet. I'm in my I think I've recorded through the 990s, I think.
I don't know, man. I'm looking at the most recent episode was 986, but it says that there's 1,000.
I'm close to 1,000. Yeah. And I last year I passed 1,000 articles. 2 years ago I passed 1,000 articles. So
okay, so those are bananas numbers by any stretch. Yeah. Like, my friends and I have said that you've effectively written multiple college textbooks worth of articles for game design that are just free and on the web, which is completely amazing.
You want to hear a crazy stat? So if you add up all my podcasts, my articles, my blog, I'm currently producing over 1 million words a year on Magic.
That is bananas. So what do you like? How have you not run out of things to talk about? You've done 1,000. I mean, I really want somebody to just give you a spreadsheet so you can like have an idea of the topics you've covered, so that
Oh, someone made a wiki that I use all the time. Whenever I go to record, I go to wiki. I go, did I talk about this already?
yeah, because you're like,
And then
oh,
half the time, I'm like, oh, I talked about this already. I got to
I
pick
did
something
3
else.
episodes on the color pot, I mean, on like red blue pairing. Crap, what do I do now? Yeah,
I mean, it's one of the challenges of my podcast, and one of the reasons I've been doing a lot of interviews is interviews are great because here's some of the expertise that's not my expertise,
let me
and so
tell you, as an interview
so
podcaster.
well, one of the things I've been doing recently is I get experts like I people that I've worked with on sets and stuff, and they're like, let's talk about the rules with Jess. Let's talk about
Exactly.
doing card concepting with Andy. Let's do art direction with Taylor. Just
Get
picking
somebody
people
from
that I can talk.
logistics on. I
What?
wanna get somebody from logistics. I wanna know the challenge of shipping cards from China to everywhere and getting the
The only
printing and
the
stuff.
only problem is certain topics
Proprietary?
are proprietary, and I don't know what's proprietary about logistics. Like but I would one of the things I've been trying to do is get people that do stuff that you have no idea and bring them on and talk to them just because it's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. It's, like, super neat to see.
Like I
Um,
did a whole podcast once on printing. I didn't have a guest. I just was talking about what I knew about printing, and the people were like, I have no like the stuff I was like. There's things, for example, when I make a magic set, I have to know like what sheets there are. Like there's things that I have to understand because it affects how we make the magic sets that the audience has no idea. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? Like the idea of I get only so many hoppers when I make the booster
right.
pack. Like people don't know that.
How do you make it so that these 2 cards show up in the same like, I was thinking about, Battleborn or Battle whatever, the
Kettlebell.
Battle Bond, where it's like you've got the 2 partner pairs, and they have to show up in each booster pack together so you
Right.
can draft them together, and I'm like, that's
And when we
insane."
made that set, there was one printer that we worked with on Earth that could do that, and that's where we printed it.
Yeah,
So,
please give us more Battle Bond. That was so much fun. So much fun. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me today, Mark. This has been an absolute blast, and I appreciate all the contributions you've done. Even though I know that sometimes you and I don't see eye to eye about Magic, but that's okay because we're fans of the game and we're not supposed to always agree. Um,
yeah, I mean, the hard part for me is it's my job to look out for everybody, and I. The thing I find so funny is how I'll be in meetings and I'll be passionately fighting for something that I, as a player, have no interest in. Probably I would remove from the game, but
yeah.
I'm like, no, there's an audience that really loves that thing. I have to go to bat for that audience, and so
Oh God,
I
dude.
think that's one of the things that I get in trouble with online all the time is I'm defending something that is like just not what that person loves about Magic, but it's what somebody else loves about Magic.
Yeah,
And so I will defend everybody's right to love the thing they love about the game, and I'll try my hardest to, make sure that they get some of what they love about it. And it's tricky because there's
yeah.
things that one player loves, another player hates by the core of their being.
Oh God.
So
Like, I don't like competitive tournament commander at all. I don't like the high end, high powered, super efficient Magic. But as a member of the advisory group and everything, my job is to help these people play the best Magic they want to play and make sure that the folks who do the rules understand that these people exist and need help or want to have their format also thrive. So I know exactly what it feels like to have to sit there and argue passionately about a thing that you hate and would just love to just evaporate. But you know what? There are millions of people out there who are playing this thing, and it's my job to make sure that they can enjoy themselves as much as I do playing a 9 drop or whatever it is.
right, and we're talking about today. You and I've been talking about casual play, competitive play. Like
Oh,
there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes to make sure that the competitive play is doing cool stuff. And like we're trying hard to hit on a lot of different areas. And one of the reasons we're making a lot of stuff is we want to make everybody happy, and a lot of people want very different things. And so
yeah. I mean,
we're trying our hardest to make everybody happy.
yeah. What do you think about the alchemy designs and stuff? Do you think like
I mean, I only see a little bit of it just because I'm so busy. I love the idea that here's a format that can only be played in this way, and this format has cards designed for this format. I think it's really cool. So I I don't know the specifics of it just because I'm so
yeah.
busy, but I love the concept of it. Here's a neat design that we can't do in tabletop, but we can do in digital. Why not let digital have fun with that? And so
Mm,
the digital players are just another one. Like that's another thing too. When we talk about all the different things, is like, hey, I want people to play the way they want to play in a way that's fun for them. But the thing here's my one last thing to finish to the
yeah.
audience. When you come to me and say, "Can you please include X? I love X." I will move hills and mountains trying to see if I can make X happen. But when you come to me and say, please remove X, I don't want X to exist, I'm going to have to say, look, fine, you don't like X, but there's someone who loves X. And so I will do everything I can to try to include things people want, but I am not going to take things out just because you don't like it if there's other people that really love it. And so I'm not a big fan of let's take X out because I don't want to experience X. Well, then don't play with X. There are people who love to play with X. Let them play with it. And I'm a big believer of like my buffet metaphor. We're going to make an amazing buffet and give you all this amazing food. You don't like some of the food? Don't eat the food. Let the people that like that food eat the food.
Or, like if you come to a restaurant that is known for doing a thing and you want another thing, maybe this is not the restaurant you want to be eating at. But you know what? That's fine. I will say also one last thing. It was really cool to see Sean Baby working on Unfinity. Sean Baby
Oh,
is, I've
I
worked with him
with him.
before. He's absolute delight. I love him a lot. And seeing him come back to the forefront to actually do something cool was really neat. I think Unfinity was a really cool idea. I still think Unstable's better because it's hard to beat how fun Contraptions and Augment Host were for me. And like Unfinity had a very steep road to try to beat those two because they're like some of my favorite things in Magic ever. But I think you did a great job, and I hope more people get a chance to play it out. If folks wanted to find you or ask you questions or anything like that, where could they go?
Well, as long as Twitter still exists, I'm on at Maro254 on Twitter. I have my own Tumblr called Blogatog on Tumblr. I am on Instagram. I am on TikTok. All the links are if you go to I have an article every week. At the bottom of the article are links to all my things, so you can find them in any one of my articles.
Jumping to Hive like the rest of the Magic community has?
Yeah, so I do a Making Magic article that's on the Wizards website every Monday. I do two podcasts a week called Drive to Work that I post Friday on social media, and they're on with my article on Monday. I'm on my blog every day answering questions. Like I say, 1 million words on Magic every year. So
how many questions do you have built up on that Tumblr, by the way?
Oh, I have I'm approaching 700,000 unanswered questions.
Jesus Christ.
And I have answered, I think my blog has now been going for like 10 years and I'm over 150,000 posts.
That's a lot, dude. That's a lot.
I average something like 32 questions a day or something is my average. So
there's no way for you to read all those or anything like that.
Anyway, so if you like content produced by me, I try very hard to make a lot of content. So
by God, you can have Mark Rosewater in any direction you want, dude. There's no end to seeing Morrow on the web.
Yes. If you want to read about me, listen to me, whatever, lots of stuff out there.
Whatever format you need.
One last thing I always want to say to people. Yeah. Today, the theme I kept saying is how I want to provide what people want. I cannot do that unless people tell me what they want. So please use social media, communicate to me. I can't always write back, obviously, but I want to hear what you like. I want to hear why you like it. The reasons is as important as what you want. I very much listen to the people. The reason soldiers, are in, I'll actually trip. The main reason it's in it's because of Chris Mooney, but. That's a common theme that I've been getting on my blog is people want more soldiers. And so
good.
Going back to Kamigawa, that was very much influenced by people saying things. So the audience speaking and talking, and not just to me, the reason Chris Mooney made soldiers is Chris had heard that people wanted soldiers. So, yeah. If you want to see things you love, communicate to me and other Wizards people that you love them. It is our job to try to make the things that you guys want. So communicate with me and with others. I every time I make a set, I'm trying to do something that I know people want. So the more you communicate with me, the more I can make it happen.
There are two things I've been asked to communicate to you. Okay. One is people would really like to see more dog cards because the fact that cats have a vast imbalance in Magic of really cool cat cards. Yes. There are not a ton of really cool dog cards. People would like more dog cards.
More dogs? Okay.
Yeah. And two, you did a HasCon exclusive of like 3 My Little Ponies. Yes. And one of them says you need the other 3 in order so that every pony can win. Yep. Please make those 3 ponies somewhere so that every pony can win.
Both of those requests I get all the time. So those are pretty frequent requests. By the way, the only reason cats tend to outstrip dogs is because in the English language, we refer to jungle cats as cats.
Yeah.
And we don't refer to other things as dogs that aren't sort of like
Right,
dogs.
like you can't like wolves and I mean, I wish you could batch together wolves, werewolves, and dogs.
People don't call wolves dogs is the problem. So it just didn't. But anyway,
fine, fair, whatever.
I know there are dog lovers out there. I've been fostering animals. I fostered some dogs. I'm definitely
I was gonna say I'm stoked that we got a walrus. I thought the walrus was really rad. Like, did you see that in in Baldur's Gate there was a walrus card?
Yes, I saw the walrus.
I love that. That's so cool.
I love goofy. I mean,
I love one like the design that makes me the happiest in the world was in Unfinity, that giant growth variant which says everything but brushwags.
Yes.
Genius. One
I'm
of the
glad
best
you
things I've ever
appreciate it.
seen.
I was very proud.
Oh my god. When I got the meta joke of this so it doesn't make changelings infinitely large, I'm like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's so good.
By the way, I love solving problems when it's one word. So that I was very proud of that answer. So
anyways, thank you so much for joining me. And friends, if you want to find me, you can find me for the time being at Gearupuri Gears on Twitter, and probably on Hive I'll do something else, or Mastodon, or we don't know where we're going, but you can find me at Gearupuri Gears. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at Cool Stuff Inc. on Tuesdays, or at YouTube every Thursday. Thank you, EK. And remember, my friends, it is not magic without the gathering, and we will see you next time.